As the Taliban consolidates its grip on Kabul, Amnesty International accuses Taliban forces of torturing and killing 9 men from Afghanistan's Hazara minority last month. Let's stick with that story because one of Amnesty International, the report's authors, Brian Kastner, joins me from New York right now. Brian Kastner, tell me more about what you discovered. You were in Afghanistan until very recently, so give me the detail on this report.
Sure. Thank you for having me. So we uncovered a massacre, like you say, of 9 Hazara men in a tiny little village in Malistan, which is a Hazara-dominated area in Ghazni province. And of course, there's a lot of focus now on Kabul and how the Taliban took it over. But of course, for months before this, there were many other dominoes falling. And as the Taliban would take over rural districts or smaller cities and then the provincial capitals, they would often cut cell phone service in parts of these areas. So it's very difficult to know what's happening. But we managed to speak to eyewitnesses, people who buried the victims, and are able to be sure that in just this one tiny little hamlet, 30 houses, 40 men total. Out of those 40 men, 9 ended up dead through torture and execution in the beginning of July.
Now, Amnesty International's chief, Agnes Kalamar, has said this: it's a reminder of the Taliban's past record, a horrifying indicator of what the Taliban rule may bring, especially for religious and ethnic minorities. Is there evidence, as you talk to colleagues in your own group and other NGOs, that this level of brutality and violence is being echoed in other parts of Afghanistan?
Well, I think the challenge is in many places we don't know, and in the few places we do, there have been credible reports of massacres in Spin Boldak. There's, of course, reports of Taliban going house to house in some of the other smaller areas, and now also Kabul. And so there's a real disconnect between what we see, what the Taliban are allowing to be released in some of these smaller cities. There's a lot of the only videos coming out of them are, being released by Taliban-friendly social media. There's a disconnect between that and what is likely happening. And this is true in Kabul as well.
We should, of course, also remind ourselves that the Taliban spokesman who gave that extraordinary press conference in Kabul just a couple of days ago, he said that the Taliban was going to offer amnesty and forgiveness to all, including those who had worked with the government and with foreign forces.
Yeah, so there's just such a disconnect between what a spokesman or a leader might say and what an 18-year-old with a Kalashnikov is going to do. And we see this even in Kabul, where spokespeople for the Taliban say, we're helping to get people out. It's okay if people go out. And then I know I have friends, colleagues, contacts. I know Americans who have tried to make it to the airport and get turned aside by Taliban checkpoints within Kabul, and the Taliban there are saying, no, you need permission from the government to leave. So it's just really inconsistent across the board, and so you end up with a situation where why bother having aircraft coming to the airport if nobody can actually get there? And just, a real chaotic and bedlam situation.
And talking of the airport, bedlam and chaos, Brian, tell me how you got out of the country, because you're very recently arrived in New York and we've seen all of the pictures of the mayhem at the airport. What happened to you?
So we tried to leave on Sunday when it was clear that the Taliban were going to be taking the city. I and some Afghan colleagues went to the airport early. But on Sunday evening, we got reports both from State Department and also contacts I had, and then also people within the airport saying the Taliban had entered the civilian side. And so we and a number of other people ended up fleeing across the active runway to the military side under gunfire. And people got separated. A couple that were Americans got pulled in. A couple that, a majority of the Afghans got pushed out. And it was, extremely challenging. It was the very beginning of all of this. I'm lucky to have gotten out on Monday, and we've been working hard to get everybody else out since.
Well, Brian Kastner, newly arrived in New York, we thank you very much for joining us on BBC World News. Thank you.
Thank you.